I'll spend 5 minutes, look them straight in the eye and say, I need you to be better than this. And then maybe I'll follow up with them later in the week and I'll text them in the morning and be like, today's a great day to really get all your homework done. Let me know if you need anything. It's actually to just enjoy the moment and enjoy the moments that you don't think are important. You really shouldn't hear someone inhale ever, unless you're on the track, like gasping for air. Like, your inhale should be silent. Inhale like a ninja, right? So like that is just a huge part of it. I film my clients often, and then I'll come up right in between the reps and be like, hey, like, let's look at this, right? And then you ask them to take responsibility for it and say, oh, this is what I see. This is Ian Markow, and you're listening to Airey Bros Radio.
That kind of caught my eye. Rich sent me a podcast today, and he told me that you work with your brother, and it's kind of like a reoccurring theme with us. We've been interviewing a lot of brother duos lately, and I'm just kind of interested how that goes for you. You know, you having the content for your brother to create, how that kind of relationship works.
Yeah, so super lucky. I like to say that we're both really chill, so I think that works really well. We're pretty similar in a lot of ways, so it's not one of those situations where it's like one of us is really high strung, one of us is really chill. We balance each other out. We're both pretty chill, so that's kind of a unique kind of aspect of it. But he was a videographer and a photographer, so he still is. But he has that scope of things that was perfect for us. So that's why you see any of our content that actually looks really good. And the reason why I set up this extra camera was for him too, right? Or his suggestion. So he really brings like the highest level of that stuff for us. And then once we started growing our business together and he was really on full time, he really dove into all the other things. So building our website, understanding ads, understanding, the metrics of all that stuff. And also managing people has been really big for us. So as funny as it is, he's like this amazing video editor, but he literally doesn't edit anything anymore. But we have someone in like Slovakia and someone in India and someone in Canada, and he's kind of managing them so that he's in a way teaching them how to do what we want them to do, and we're paying them to do it. So he's been able to manage as well. So that's kind of how it started. I just kind of asked him, I said, hey, this thing's growing a little bit faster than I thought. I see an opportunity for both of us. Being in photography and videography, it can be a little bit up and down. So I wanted to kind of like, hey, work with the one person I want to work with more than anybody else, and have it be something that could also be beneficial for our overall family long term. Because obviously, the more stable he is, the more we're going to be able to help my mom and the rest of our family as well. So it's really just worked out really well. We've had hiccups just like anything, but most of it was just me needing to grow up. Like him being like, hey, maybe we shouldn't post this meme, and me being like, I don't really care. So like me having to kind of tailor some of that back, and just think with more of a business mind is probably our biggest hurdle that I've had to like kind of address.
So is he the older brother?
Yeah, he is the older brother. And it's funny too, because like he just cut his hair, but he has like really long hair. I'm losing my hair. So like when we go on workshops, people will be like, they'll look at us and they'll be like, so who's the younger brother? And I'm like, damn, like you guys shouldn't even be asking that. You know what I mean? So it's really funny. Yeah, he is the older brother by 4 years.
Okay, right on. And you guys grew up in Florida?
Yeah, we were he was born in New York, I was born in Miami, but we basically grew up in Palm Beach County, Boca Raton to be exact. We both went to UCF in Orlando for college. I spent 5 years in New York City, and Alex has basically just been from Orlando, went straight down to Miami, and has just kind of like really built up his base in Miami. He's a big Miami person at this point. Not like what you would think stereotypically, but like, he's got a lot of really good roots down there.
Okay. Coming up in Florida, were you guys athletes in high school and that sort of stuff? I mean, what led you on your fitness journey?
Yeah, so I was like a really textbook bad kid, like kind of like I was in the gifted program like in middle school, but I was also the class clown, so like that kind of mixture of it. Got diagnosed with ADD, so it's kind of like in that realm as well, which you can imagine. And when I got to high school, I kind of got even worse. And I played basketball. That was my main sport. I had a lot of concussions growing up, so I wasn't really allowed to play football. And baseball, I was really good at younger, but I kind of fizzled out on it because, again, it was just kind of boring. I would like be in the outfield and catching imaginary balls and stuff. And I was like, all right, this isn't for me. So I moved on to basketball, really focused on that. But then by my junior year, I basically got kicked off the team. It was like some type of situation where I was like about to make varsity as a freshman, so like really high potential. And then by the time I got junior year, I got kicked off the team. Senior year, I quit. My brother was a similar scenario where like he was like basically like Randy Johnson pitching, and when he was like in seventh, eighth grade, he was like 6'4" in eighth grade, like an absolute rail, but like he threw super hard, like really great pitcher. But he had a really bad high school coach. And especially with baseball, you get a lot of overuse, and it just kind of ruined the sport for him. And I don't think he was destined to really be that long-term athlete anyway, but it kind of ended it even earlier. And then he kind of got into, you know, partying and then eventually photography. So he definitely doesn't consider himself an athlete. We actually went to shoot some content, speaking of content, and it's a funny story. We went somewhere in New York City called Chelsea Piers. It's like a really great facility. And we were going to shoot like just a couple of like kind of cool looking basketball stuff where I'm like shooting, dribbling, doing some stuff like that. And we literally get out there, and his first layup that he did, he rolled his ankle. And he literally didn't leave the ground. It was like, I don't even know how you managed to roll your ankle. It was more of like a step. So yeah, I don't know that he would probably consider himself an athlete, but I still play basketball at least once a week. I'm trying to play more, and I definitely consider myself an athlete. I'm into sports, so yeah, for sure. I definitely identify as an athlete.
Off of that, just kind of talking about with your basketball and being a back kid, so that kind of like not panning out for you, but obviously you stayed with fitness, and I would think that you probably work with some athletes and maybe even some younger ones. So how would you maybe talk to a younger athlete who is all about like, I need these credentials, but you've made a life out of doing this, and you don't really, you don't have the credentials because that went the way it went, but obviously this was your path. So what would you say to someone?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I actually had the pleasure of we just released a YouTube episode too of a speed session with the two kids I'm talking about. But I had the pleasure of like training these two baseball athletes from Canada, and they're brothers too. So another keep the theme going. But it was really a kind of a life-changing experience in a lot of ways. You know, the other thing about them is they're homeschool. So that was really interesting for me, you know, because like a lot of the things that I did in high school, I got to too early. You know, I had an older brother. I kind of got to a lot of the bad stuff a little too early, not even necessarily because my brother, but just because. And training these kids and also becoming a dad was also kind of like all happening at once. So that was very interesting. But like teaching to a young athlete, the first thing that I think is obviously paramount is like play as many sports as you can. Developing skills as an athlete doesn't need to mean specific skills. You're always going to be able to go specific later. But creating those general qualities would be a thing that I would really advise young athletes to do. Another thing would be do track and field. Like, even if you're the slowest person on the team and you just like, you're there just to be there and you're just getting reps in and learning, especially as a trainer, like I'm having to go and relearn track and field when I never did it earlier. And it's tough. You know, not only am I slow, but like there's such a big learning curve on like learning the plyometrics, learning the cues, learning all these things. And you know, so track and field would be a great thing for me. There are sports where you don't run, but the majority of the sports you play, you're gonna sprint, or even if you didn't, just being able to walk and run really well will kind of keep you healthy throughout your life in a lot of ways. Because you know, we're meant to do a lot of things. We have a lot of capabilities, but, you know, gait is a very important part of being human, I would say. And then the third thing that I would really harp on is actually to just enjoy the moment and enjoy the moments that you don't think are important. Specifically, the moments in the locker room, the moments in the car on the way to the games, the moments in the dugout in between your friends. Those moments are some of the moments that I actually personally miss the most. Maybe it's because I didn't get to reach my full potential, but looking back and like thinking like, oh man, I got to go to practice again. But like realistically, that moment of like really hanging out with all those people, learning the group dynamics, understanding leaders and learning how to work with each other, understanding how to bring other people up, and all those different things. I think those are such great skills, and a really good coach later on in life, like talking about getting recruited, talking about getting even to the big leagues or any of that stuff. I think those things are very important. And you can even, kind of an extreme example, but you guys know Caleb Presley from Barstool?
Yeah.
So like he was at UNC and he was like kind of like a walk-on, but he basically created a position where he's just like the hype man for the team, you know? And the experiences he got off of that were probably better than a lot of the experiences that some of the people that played on the team got, you know? So it's just kind of an extreme example, but you know, filling those gaps that are often people don't think about are something that I think young athletes could really work on. And just learning how to be a part of a team is a good way to kind of sum that up.
Do you see with your work that there's a shift going back to multi-sport athletes? Because I graduated from high school in '94, and I feel like, at least where we're from in New Jersey, that was kind of the beginning of like very narrowed in specificity at a young age. And now I'm starting to see coaching that you're starting to get some crossover, some multi-sports, or college football coaches, you know, tweeting about, hey, you should run track, or, you know, you're seeing linemen in the NFL that were state champion wrestlers. Do you see that there's getting more of that multi-sport coming back?
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
would totally agree with your timeline as well, in terms of like, I think Tiger Woods was kind of like the epitome of it. Like, oh, look at Tiger. Like, if I can force my kid to play golf from 4 years old, he's going to be amazing, you know? And then parents would take that with piano, with everything. Like, no, don't play the flute, just play piano. But now you see, even like on a music level, some people are so talented, they can sing, do the piano, do the flute, do whatever, all the drums, they can play all these different things. And you can kind of see that some of their music actually may reach a different level than if someone who just sang, and just beat that point home. So I think a good book that's on this topic too, that if anybody listening wants to know, is Range, is really good. And it basically like kind of discusses that. And that book changed you know, the way that I see movement in a lot of ways also, along with FRS and Kinstretch and FRC and all that stuff too, because, you know, like movement ultimately comes down to movement. It's movement options that lead to a movement solution. And if you have more options, you can self-select those options to be the best one to use. And if you're constantly doing the same thing, you're also really wearing down the same tissue a lot of times. Not specifically that exact spot, but you know, a swing is a swing, especially when it's swinging left a million times. So, you know, being able to spread that across and build, again, kind of like a plethora of options for that solution is a big deal. I think Pete Carroll was also on that timeline. He kind of like stands out to me in terms of someone that I really heard say and really got retweeted, like, hey, the people that I want to draft are the ones that have played multiple sports. And then with the track thing, I mean, it just kind of makes a lot of sense. You know, like you go to the NFL Combine, it's like, all right, well, what am I going to do to get really good at all this stuff? Like, sounds like track, you know, high jump, sprint, long distance, short distance. It kind of makes too much sense to ignore, you know?
Well, as a track coach, I really appreciate you saying all that about doing track and field. It makes my heart
I didn't
happy.
even know. I'm still
Yeah.
gassing. That's great.
Bringing that up about being multifaceted and being good at more than one sport, and then, you know, you look at your resume of things and all the modalities you've learned and you apply to your coaching. Was it always kind of that mindset to stay open, or did you, like, whether it be can stretch or, you know, mobility stuff, was it I'm doing this and then it took you down that avenue? And then how do you kind of disperse that with your clientele with all those different tools that you have? Or is it what you just said, as far as it's not one size fits all, it's different for everybody?
Yeah, so I definitely went from being a personal trainer, which is not a bad thing or in any means, but like someone that you can just think of, like, I don't know, for me, it's like okay, I had like a little bit of a streak of boxing, right? I had an overweight client. Did I know how to box? Absolutely not. But I knew how to have fun, hold the mitts for them, joke around, do little things like that. I knew how to do bodybuilding stuff, right? Because I had been doing it my whole life, not at a high level, but like, you know, if anybody knows from Florida, like, but cutting the side of your t-shirt, going to LA Fitness and doing, you know, bicep curls with your friends, you know. So I had experience in that way. So I would say that started off as my main base, but that only solves so many solutions, because at a certain point in New York City, you're seeing such a plethora of people just because there's so many people there. And that's where I looked at the FRC stuff, and Dre, the creator, Andrea Spina, just listening to him talk was like it was mind blowing, honestly. And I would say that would be the first biggest rock that really opened my mind up, because it changed how I thought about fitness and movement so much in one weekend that it was like, oh, like I'm kind of prepared for this to happen again. But fortunately, because I was so young, I actually clung so hard to that I went down the whole system. So I did the Kinter Edge, which is just FRC in the group fitness, or in the group scenario. I did FRA, which is their assessment. I even explored maybe doing soft tissue work and doing their FR course. So like I really took the time to soak that in and turn it into a specialty, which was completely just invaluable in New York City to be that person, because I was getting jujitsu people. And like the truth is, like you get someone that does jujitsu and you're like, all right, we're just gonna deadlift. Like it's not gonna go well at a certain point. Like that person needs so much mobility to be on their back and guard, to have someone pulling them into a Kimura, the sleeper, all these different positions. So I knew that there was a hole missing, and I really specialized in that, and it filled a lot of them. But I also eventually in my career found a physical therapist named Fabian Garcia, and he mentored me, and I worked out of his place, and I also assisted there. And he was so open-minded. He would learn from anybody. He would go full on into a system. On Monday, he'd be working with every new patient, trying to apply it, failing, succeeding, kind of doing okay, failing again, succeeding. And watching him struggle and succeed through that process was kind of what really kind of solidified that approach for me. And then I got to a point where I even needed to kind of look beyond him. And that's when I started going into all these other avenues, whether it be, you know, kettlebells, stick mobility, you know, getting into the compression expansion, looking into Posture Restoration Institute. So I think those were some of the big things. And also later on, from what I just talked about, I did find that book. And I think that book is just such a good way to summarize everything that we're talking about, because it really does discuss everything that we're talking about and put it all together. And then in terms of applying it, what I do now is like, I'll have some people that most of the people do a lot of the same things. So I'm going to teach someone how to do the kickstand hinge that you might have seen on our Instagram. Like every single person is going to learn that, because feeling how your glute actually stretches, giving yourself a little bit of internal rotation, and understanding what it feels like to get weight over the middle of your foot. I think those things are something that every single human needs. Even the person, like both of you guys, if you guys came to me and were in there for assessment, the person who's in jujitsu, they're on their back the whole time with their butt tucked under them for most of their sport. They absolutely need to learn how to do the opposite. And then for the person that's running all the time, you're going to get your power and your push from pushing through mid stance. And if you skip mid stance, meaning like you roll from your heel to your toes and don't get that good push through the middle, you're not going to really be doing well in the long term, in my opinion, either. So there's certain things that I'm going to give every single client. They're going to eventually get there, but I'll pull from different systems. And some people will see something on Instagram, especially with the mobility work, and they'll come and we'll do 3% of our program is mobility work. And it's like hip and shoulder car. And then like 6 weeks in, they're like, man, you know, like I feel really mobile. I feel really loose. And they're like, but I haven't done any stretching. And they're like, I thought I was going to do more stretching. And I was like, do you want to do stretching? And they're like, no, it's really boring. And I'm like, well, that's why we're not doing any stretching, because you don't need to do it. And you're having fun, right? Yeah. All right. And let's go through your goal list. Check, 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 check. We're moving in the right direction. Let's keep going. I tried to think about once you get good at applying certain things, then you have to do maybe the tougher task to say, which one of these things or approaches is going to give me as many rocks or is going to check as many boxes as possible with one thing, instead of having someone work out 7 days a week. You got to have this, you got to have that. And then lastly, there's people that come to me and they're like, I want to work out 8 days a week. And I'm like, yeah, but there's only 7 days in a week. So I don't know how you got those numbers, but sure. And then they can do a full day of this, a full day of FRC, a full day of powerlifting. They can do zone 2 on their 5th day. And they can have like this crazy filled schedule that really does all of the things that I know. And Carlos is an example of that. He's kind of like the really shredded dude that's in a lot of my content that people know.
You bring up all the different things you've learned and that you add. Do you have anything that you're studying right now or you're playing with right now and throwing in there as you're learning it right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the compression expansion model. So I think the person that you would think of the most as being responsible for it would be Bill Hartman. He's kind of like someone who was early on with PRI. I think I'm not going to tell this story, but he was early on with PRI and then basically branched out and created his own thing. And I think that's the thing that I've been learning over the past 2 years the most. I've been learning it from, Connor Harris. I've been learning from Alex Effer. David Gray is like one of my biggest mentors. So I think one of the things that's really important that a lot of people miss over is just like anything, there's extremes. So there's one coach that's like, oh, I don't need to do a weekend certification. That's whack. Oh, I don't need to do continuing education. And they're just kind of stuck in a rut. And like, even they're unhappy, and the clients usually show that too. They're kind of bored as well. And then there's the person that just goes like to everything, and they just are learning. They're in a constant state of learning, but they're not ever applying it. And that's where you actually learn, what do I need to keep? What do I need to put away? What do I need specifically for each individual context? So I'd say if I was going to describe where I am at now, that's where I'm at now. I have really worked so goddamn hard over the past 2 years to understand all that stuff. And now I'm in the process of, finding out where it fits, making sure that my cues are really good, making sure that I'm not wasting anybody's time by using some of this stuff, and just finding a way to integrate it all. So I'm kind of in that stage of applying all that stuff. And then after that, I'm not sure where I'm going to go next. Honestly, I think track. I think that's it. That's it. I love to, there's a great coach that I grew up with that's pretty well known named John Garish. He trains out of the school. He does this really awesome thing called South Florida Speed School, where basically, it's free every single Saturday, and he'll get like 50, 100 kids from the area, all the different schools. And, just puts them through a free track workout every weekend. And I'd like to start attending that more. I'd like to start learning from him more, and just like really honing in those skills of how to make people faster, how to make young kids good at sprinting and running and jumping, and making myself better at that. Because, just adding plyometrics and going and playing basketball, like the difference is monumental. So I'd say that's where I'm going next.
So I'm going to touch on the track stuff. As I said, I'm a track coach. I'm curious your thoughts and your observations of what you've seen so far. So often when we get younger kids, they just don't even know how to like be in their body. They're, and I don't know if was always that way, or if it, like, technology and that sort of stuff has made it so that they don't know how to move and use their body. What are some of the key takeaways that you've seen so far, and some of the the key cues that you've been using?
Yeah, I think two big things. One would be the mobility work works really well with those people. So things like cars, like the controlled articular rotations, like joint circles, you're basically learning how to move one joint and not move the other. So when you go and you're like, hey, I want you to really attack the ground, but don't get so extended. Don't throw your chest up too much for the kid that's always in their lower back. And those cues start to kind of come together a little bit better because they've learned how to control their body in a more constrained environment. So something like, hey, you're just allowed to move your hip, versus you're running, you're coordinating this movement, and it's fast. and I'm cueing you and watching. So it's like being able to kind of break that down with some of the mobility stuff and give them that baseline control. Something as simple as like doing pelvic tilts and really understanding where that is, right? For the kid that's always straining his hamstrings, he might be so extended, so tilted forward that his hamstrings are always on stretch. So getting them that baseline of just not to have the perfect posture and have it stuck there, but being able to restore the movement there can be really beneficial for those people. And then breathing would be another thing that I would say is huge for the kids. You know, so many of them are from all the things that you're talking about, have really poor breathing patterns, and restoring that is like a cheat code for so many different things. You know, I think it gets overused, but the proximal stability for just the mobility kind of thing, where it's like, if your rib cage and pelvis start in a good position, you're going to be so much more successful with your hips and your shoulders, your neck, everything else. And I think restoring that is actually has to start with breathing. So I think those are the two things that I would say would be mixed into the pot. And then I also think it just takes time too, man, especially with the kids. You know, some athletes are going to get it faster than others, but just time, repetition, positive reinforcement. And the thing about the technology thing, whereas we just kind of talked about, or we kind of, you know, low-key reference like, hey, you're on your phone all day, your head's forward, you're hunched over, blah blah, all the things that you'll see on Instagram nonstop. But you can also reverse that and say, I film my clients often, like especially the younger athletes, will slow-mo things, and then I'll come up right in between the reps and be like, hey, like, let's look at this. And I won't say, hey, stop doing this. I'll say, well, what do you see? Right. And then you ask them to take responsibility for it and say, oh, this is what I see. All right. And that's even better when you get those two brothers, because it's like, okay, well, what did you see with your brother? Oh, I saw this. Yeah, he always does that. It's like, well, let's make sure he does it anymore, you know? And then it's like, now here's a solution so that you don't do that. Try this cue, right? And then boom, we can test it right on the spot. So kind of playing into technology and using it as a positive can be really powerful, I think, for these kids. Because what you're really trying to do with kids, which is like really hilarious when you start talking to younger kids, like you get alone with like a 2-year-old, you're like, what do I say to you now? You know what I mean? So like interacting with kids and being able to talk to them takes time, especially even if it's your own kids. Sometimes I look at my son and go like, you know? So being able to meet them in that middle ground of like, yeah, they have their iPad at home. Well, let me show you what you need to improve on your phone. And it just starts to click with them really fast. And I think that's a good little kind of thing to add.
Thank you. Are you using like Coach's Eye, or you have a special
I was using Coach's Eye for a while, but honestly, for what I'm talking about, because I'm there with the person, I'll just point it out to them, where I don't necessarily need to like edit the video or anything. Like it's like, hey, let me just buffer it, and I'll just show you like, hey, like, you know, your hip's not coming through very fast here. Let's see if we can get it through faster. And maybe you need to work on your hip flexors a little bit, and then they're weak. And now it's like, oh, you see, now I can make that connection between the two and get more buy-in for some of maybe the work that they don't want to do. For people online, I'll often, I was using Coach's Eye a lot, and it was good, but I think I had the free version, and it would take some of the video quality away. So I get away right now with mostly just using the Instagram stories, honestly, because I'm mostly just putting lines or arrows or something very simple on there. And because I'm on there anyway, that kind of streamlines the process and makes it a little bit easier for me.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, making the phone part of it, because I don't know for how many times I worked out as an athlete or learning as a coach. You think you're moving right, and then you get in front of a coach, or you go to a seminar and you're moving whatever, and you're in the center. And it's like, now I have this phone, I can watch myself and coach myself. So that's brilliant. And you said one of the things that is key when you're teaching young athletes is breath, right? Teach them how to breathe. And I think that's just key for humans in general. And that's something we're talking about constantly, keeps on coming back up on the podcast, is different breathing practices and how people use them in their daily life. So I'm just curious what kind of breathing practices you subscribe to, what you use with your clients, and how you kind of break that down for people, whether it be a a child or, an athlete or, just a regular client?
Yeah. So the simpler, the better to start. Something as simple as, breathing through your nose, bringing a little bit of attention to the jaw and the teeth can be really a game changer. People that don't breathe well often just like have their mouth either wide open, a little bit open, or there's just not really a seal, which is kind of similar to like a foot on the ground. You can kind of look and it like looks like your heel's on the ground, but if there's no weight on it, your ankle's not going to unlock. So like you really need to have like a full seal to actually get that IAP, that pressurized system that we're kind of looking for in a lot of ways. So bringing attention to the jaw, a lot of people haven't even thought about it, even the people that have a lot of tension in their jaw. So like something as simple as like close your eyes. Let's take your visual system away. You take one sense away, just like someone that's blind, all of a sudden they're daredevil, right? Like, so you can take away a little bit of their senses, they can focus on the rest of them, really get in tune with their body, which goes into the conversation we just talked about with the younger athletes, right? Like giving them the opportunity to really get in tune with their body. And that's what the breath does. So something as simple as like, can you feel your teeth touching? All right, let your jaw relax. Just almost like a guided meditation in a way is a really good way to go about it at first. But something as simple as breathing in through your nose with your mouth closed and then just exhaling as long as you can comfortably. I think one of the big things that I messed up early on with the breathing stuff is like, it really needs to be as efficient and effortless as possible. So you really shouldn't hear someone inhale ever, unless you're on the track, like gasping for air. Like your inhale should be silent. You do zone 2 work. So think like, I'm sure you guys have talked about this before, but just like steady state cardio, right? So, you're keeping your mouth sealed, you're breathing in through your nose, making it as silent as possible. I say inhale like a ninja, right? So like that is just a huge part of it. As long as they don't have a blockage in their nasal passage, taping your mouth is a game changer. It sounds crazy at first, but you take like a 3M micropore tape, you can get comfortable with it and put it on 10 minutes before bed. And then once you go to sleep, take it off as soon as you feel ready, try to sleep with it. So like slowly, incrementally building that up and just basically turning their main system into the nasal breathing versus the mouth breathing. Because, another book, James Nestor Breath talks about this a lot, but the idea that like, mouth breathing really messes you up in so many ways. And getting them just to do nasal breathing is just a huge part there. And then another thing that's often kind of misconstrued or maybe not even represented is the idea that aerobic training is going to improve your breathing. I mean, they're the same thing in a way. So if you just start them off with that baseline and then you have them do cardio, I mean, that's a great thing, right? Cardio is not going to kill your gains. Hopefully we've all gotten past that. And just adding that into your routine is huge and it can really fix a lot of the dysfunction of the breathing just by getting on the Airdyne, by getting 50 calories with your mouth sealed and breathing in through your nose. So that's another thing. And then to take it even further, like talking about what I've been learning the past 2 years is being able to choose certain positions that bias the air into certain parts of their body and bring expansion to tissues that have been very compressed, very shortened, not been able to lengthen is a game changer. Because again, we talked about the rib cage a little bit, but when you have a portion of your rib cage that's just stuck and it does not move at all, you can do all the cat cows you want in the world, but until you get that stretch from within where the breath is expanding that area, it's going to be hard to really get that. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I have experienced that in terms of getting it done as fast as possible. That's the best way to do it, to start with that expansion from within and then move the area, and possibly not even do anything specific. Just fill it up, get those ribs moving, and then do strength training. And if you do a little bit of alternating work where like, one side's pressing, one side's coming back, sometimes that's all someone needs, especially for someone like a track athlete. So I think that's, especially with anybody that's had a chronic pain or, not trying to be a physical therapist, but kind of helping them while they're getting over physical therapy, or, if someone has had a really bad experience with physical therapy, using that sort of breathing is also a really, really big game changer.
Never thought of that. Never thought of the breathing to open up those positions, but I'm sure we've all been doing some deep breathing and hear something crack or hear something open up. So I'm sure that's what you're speaking
Self-adjustment.
of. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why the nasal breathing is so cool at night, because you haven't been expanding that area because you've been mouth breathing. You've been getting this like really low quality breath that you're really breathing with your neck, and you're almost like cheating expansion versus getting a true expansion 360 degrees everywhere. So when you have someone, things that I try to do with my clients are like as little time consuming as possible, as effortless as possible. Like, what are the things that I can do that are the easiest to implement, that are going to give you the biggest impact? And when you nasal breathe for 6 to 9 hours every single night when you go to sleep, you are going to have energy to train harder. You're going to start to open up your nose, which is another great thing, especially as an athlete. You're going to be able to deal with some anxiety as well. That's going to definitely help you. And then you're going to restore movement options just by, like we said, expanding the rib cage, getting certain things moving just through the natural breath cycle done well.
Yeah, you're definitely speaking our language here with all the stuff we've been talking about. I'm curious, your clientele and the people you work with, they're seeking you out, so they're coming to you. And I imagine when you're giving them all this stuff to do, they're very receptive of it. Sometimes that always isn't the case when you're dealing with a high school team. They look like you got two heads when you're just talking about breathing in and out of their nose. Do you ever encounter that sort of stuff? I mean, obviously you're well versed in everything, so you can give breakdowns one-on-one with that sort of stuff. But do you ever, is everyone that comes to you pretty receptive with everything you're talking about with some of these baseline basic things?
Yes and no. I think the first caveat is definitely to just lower expectations on team stuff. I think that was one of the big things that I learned, not early on, but a couple of years ago. The same track coach that I was talking about earlier, John Garris, asked me to come and do mobility work with his athletes. And at first I was like so excited, and I still was. It was great, but like, you get in there and you're like, all right, we're going to do like simple calf stretch. And I'm like, make sure your heel is on the ground. And I look around and like 60% of the room has their heel off of the ground. And I'm like, it wasn't a cueing thing. It wasn't like I said it wrong. It's like, it was that simple. Like, your heel has to be on the ground. And like, nobody did it, which goes into what you were talking about earlier, where it's like, hey, some of the athletes don't know where their body is in space, right? So I think lowering expectations for the group and even lowering your plan in a lot of ways. The things that I'm able to do one-on-one should be light years ahead of what you can do with 20 people, especially at the high school level. So knowing that, and it would one of the reasons I've shied away from really working hard on getting into those situations is because me being so detail oriented, it's really tough for me to get into that room and be like, man, some of these reps are bad, but like, what can I do? You can't correct every single person. So that's where you would go into building your programming out to be really safe, to maybe start with regressions, even if someone has to get better at the basics, knowing that they could be ready for the next progression. So you might have those 3 athletes that are just amazing, but you kind of build their foundation up even slower, because the rest of the team might need some stuff. And then maybe you go and assign some extra homework to that athlete or something like that. But yeah, that would be my first thing, is just to recognize how hard your job is working with a group like that, and to maybe cut yourself some slack if that's you in that situation, because it's really is that hard. And to maybe use something like constraints, for example, you can put for doing a hip car, right? You put a block between their hip and the wall. If the block drops, they're all the way away from the wall. They're obviously not moving through just their hip anymore. So kind of like booby trapping them into place and giving them extra feedback so that they can't mess something up would be something I would aim to do a lot. And then in terms of dealing with one-on-one, I get a lot of people that are like, they have preconceived notions. They're ready to dive in. They might be more ready to dive in than I am, like I said, with mobility work. But there's definitely some tough people too as well. But I find that comes in with more of the communication skills than it does with like, what am I programming? What exercise am I choosing? It's really more about getting to know them. I think a lot of trainers, and rightfully so, because it's really hard to do, struggle with accountability. Like, I gave you homework, you didn't do it. Now what? Do I just say, oh, you know what? It's okay. Don't worry about it. You're 5 minutes late to every single session when I asked you to be 5 minutes earlier and get on the bike so you can sweat first. So, what? Oh, you know, it's not a big deal. Like, you are setting the tone to continue having that happen over and over. So it's really, for me, a lot of those people just need the communication. They need to say, hey man, you know, listen, I know you've been dealing with a lot of pain, but like, if you're not doing your homework, then it's not going to go well. And I really need you. I'll spend 5 minutes, look them straight in the eye and say, I need you to be better than this. I know you can, and I need you to be better than this. And then maybe I'll follow up with them later in the week, and I'll text them in the morning and be like, today's a great day to really get all your homework done. Let me know if you need anything. And I'll give them just that little bit of extra accountability to get them going. And then, like I said, I'll tie it back into their goals. It's like, yeah, I have this one client right now who like has probably done like 30% of what I gave him. In our first session, he like fell on the ground in agony and pain. He's like the type of client that like the surgeon told him to get surgery, but it was the same surgeon that was the best surgeon in the world, but also messed up his first surgery. So it's like, okay. But he was like first session, like in agony on the ground. And now he like went to Costa Rica, he's ziplining, and he's literally done 30% of what I asked him. Like, it's like nothing. So for him, I'm like, listen, I understand you're feeling better. I understand it's going well, but like your first goal was to get out of pain, but your real goal was to get back to skiing. And the way that you're acting, the way that you're doing your homework is not going to get you back to skiing. So I need you to be better. And I'll just kind of tie it back to like, what's the goal? What are you doing? Like, let's really hold you accountable. And, you know, that same person, we had a decent 5-minute conversation about really prioritizing self, which is really common if you work with moms, right? You know, I had my son, my husband, my cousin, I had to do all these other things for all these other people. It's like, yeah, but we need to work on you being able to tell them that you need time for you. So using your communication like that to get them to really get to that outcome by, even if you're telling them to communicate with other people, that's really common too. So I think all those strategies are ones that I use with success often.
The two follow-ups there, 2 and 1. First one, have you ever fired a client?
Oh, big time. Many,
okay.
many. Especially in New York. Yeah. Like, and especially once you get busy. I mean, that's you know, it's kind of whack to like brag about it, but it's also really a pivotal part in, I think, a trainer's career, to get to a point where it's like, you know what? No, I don't want to work with this person anymore, because especially if you're a trainer like me, like I put 110% in emotionally, time-wise, I'm there. Like, I'm giving everything I have to you. Like, I'm not on my phone, I'm in the session, like we're there. And I'm, you know, knowing what's going on in your life. I'm investing in your life, not just your training. So for me to be like that and to get such a low level back time and time again, or to have someone that is just such a, like so many obstacles and they're just not ready to change. Once I'm through my arsenal and they've proved that, I might just say, hey, you know, it's time to move on, and here's someone else that might be better for you. But I've absolutely fired clients. And I've also, it's funny, I got asked this yesterday by one of my clients, but I've also had, what I have happen more often is I do an assessment with someone. When I do assessment with you, I like set up a Google Doc, I put everything on film, put everything in pictures. So like your assessment lives on past there, so that you can stop being the person on the DMs being like, I have knee pain, it's somewhere around my knee. You can go like, hey, I have this whole document of like what's actually going on with me. So like you can take that to the next person. But I'll often have that session with people and we'll do the assessment, and I'll leave the assessment thinking to myself like, no, yeah, I don't want to work with this person, or I'm not a good fit for them too. That happens too. And I'll you know, it's like you got your value out of that 90 minutes with me, but like, hey, like, I just don't think this is going to be a good fit. I think you need to go to this person or try to check this person out. And that'll happen a lot with like physical therapy stuff, because unfortunately, with the way that my careers went, fortunately, And unfortunately, I've really been put in that gray area between physical therapy and personal training, and I'm working really hard to climb out, but I just keep getting grabbed from the bottom. They just keep coming. So there will be a lot of scenarios where I'll have someone that's just like, you know what, like you should see a physical therapist. Like I don't want to try to solve these problems, and I'd be more than happy to work with the physical therapist, and including sending them everything that I learned today about you. So that happens a lot.
And then the other one, I was just curious, with all the coursework and stuff that you've talked about and mentioned, and you got to where you are, have you ever done any just like straight like communication stuff?
Yeah, I actually my degree is a communication degree. So
Okay.
I did at UCF. Like I said, bad kid. Just like, what am I going to do in college? I do not know. So someone was like, you should do communication. You could get a sales job. You could get anything. Like, I like talking to people. So, I did that. And it was one of those situations where it was like, man, I really do use a lot of this stuff. I had a class called Persuasion. I have to sell myself every single day, whether it's on Instagram or in person, or sell the why you should do your homework, right? So that really did pay dividends. And I even though it's kind of a crazy time now, like sometimes I think about this for my son who's like 1 year old. It's like, when he's 18, is it even going to be the norm to go to college anymore because of how things are? So I feel fortunate to have had a positive experience with college, and to not have went for anthropology and then now you don't do anything, or you have 6 years of archaeology as an archaeologist, but like now you're doing sales. You know what I mean? So I feel very fortunate for that.
Right on. That's cool.
Yeah.
Ian, in having this conversation, I can tell that you're super passionate about movement and coaching. That said, you have a really big online presence, and I would say almost fall in the category of being a content creator. I know you said that you have a team and you and your brother work together. Do you have it set up now where you're just getting the focus on doing the coaching and you have someone else doing the other stuff for you?
I sure wish, man. I really do wish. No, man, honestly, it's my I'm trying to change my own mindset. David Gray actually helped me a lot with this. I listen to his podcast sometimes, and he talked a lot about like the idea being that you kind of have to, in today's age, you can do it without it, but you're going to be really busy in person. You're not going to have passive income, like a lot of those great things that are sold to all of us on Instagram. You're not going to have those things unless you're creating content. And you kind of just have to get to a point where you're like, you know what? I am a content creator. I can be a personal trainer and a content creator, and I am a content creator, and really just buck up and do it. When I first started, I loved it. I would literally, in New York City, go to the physical therapy clinic, be alone the entire weekend. I'd work out and film for like 6 hours. And I can't tell you how little I would want to do that right now. So it's a process. I think right now I'm working on the mindset shift of like getting fired up about it. Another little tangent, but one of the things that I've realized recently is like I'm not enjoying training as much. And I think one of the reasons I enjoyed training so much for so many years was because I was exploring so much. Now it's like I know what I need to do to be good, but it's not like, let me try this random stuff, which kind of gets bad flack on Instagram. But I think if you're someone who is working out more, or even just enjoying it so much because you are doing some random stuff and exploring, I think that that's okay, especially for a few years. And that's how I had a lot of my success. But yeah, right now we have my brother and I get together and we do some of the longer form stuff, some of the YouTube stuff. He's came to our first 7 workshops, so we have a ton of workshop stuff that we're editing and putting out that you'll see on our Instagram. I do a lot of, I think, filming your clients, obviously getting their permission, but that's really a content kind of factory in a way. It's like, let me show this person doing this exercise and tell you about it. Like, that's a really great way, and that's always been my bread and butter in terms of doing that. Like I said earlier, like some of my clients, I mean, I've had multiple clients, well, they'll be in like a gym and someone will come up and be like, hey, aren't you that Asian girl from Ian Markow's Instagram? So like it's kind of cool. They obviously love that. And yeah, that's where we're at now. We do have a social media manager that we just hired. But the problem really is like it's very hard to replace you. When you think about writing a caption, she's not in fitness, and to find someone who's going to be your social media manager but not want to do their own business and be really good at doing Canva but also really good at understanding the jargon we use as trainers, it's kind of unrealistic. I'm sure it exists, but I'm not finding it, and I don't know if we can afford to pay that person because they would be so valuable, to be honest. So things like writing a caption, right? The person that doesn't train anybody, they write a caption, like it's not going to come off great. So I'm still highly involved in everything we do, which sucks, but it's okay. And just got to keep plugging away and take a lot of the easy wins. Today I saw something really cool on Instagram that was like someone dancing, and it like reminded me of like fascia and like everything being connected, and it was just like an AI image created by an artist. And like I took that, I credited them so that they're going to gain followers from it, and then I wrote a caption under it. So I didn't even have to film myself. And I think the last tangent about this is like, one of the things I've struggled with a lot over the past few years is being the person on camera. I think that there's ways to do it and ways that you can not be on camera, and to make that transition from being the shirtless person in the turf in NYC every weekend and being the coach behind the scenes has been tough, but totally worth it too. Because it takes a lot of the pressure off for you in some ways, and you really have to be good to do that too, because it's not easy to be the coach and explaining the nuances and all those things. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about the content. It sucks, but it's necessary for the goals that I have for myself and my family.
I appreciate that perspective. Yeah. I really do, because Rich is the coach, and I just went to school to help on the content side of things. So trying to figure out that dynamic. And also, I don't like social media, but like you said, it's kind of like a necessary evil. So it's just one of those things that, hey, if this is what you want to do, buck up. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, AI can be really helpful too. One of the things that we use is, it would be good for you guys and anybody who has a podcast, is there's an AI called Opus, OPUS. I'll send it to you guys after. And it's basically like, you take I'm filming this right now, I'll put it on YouTube, and then I'll just take that YouTube link and I'll put it in this AI, and then it'll shoot me back 10 clips that already have captions on the in the thing. They describe what I'm saying, so if I wanted to kind of write it under the actual caption, so there's little cheat codes like that can be really helpful. It's not always 100%. They might oftentimes they'll have you asking the question will be part of it, so it's it's not always perfect. You'll still have to cut it some, but little things like that can be really helpful. And then Canva, using the tech is really helpful. And then long term, getting someone to edit for you is, I absolutely think, the move, because whether you're an expert like my brother, or you're just someone who's fumbling through LimeWire or Adobe Premiere, which I tried and I almost jumped off a cliff. It was unbelievable. So whether you're on either ends of those spectrum, there's someone on Fiverr, on Upwork, that will edit for you. We actually get DM'd sometimes, some people that are offering to edit for 2 weeks for free, and I'm like, oh, we already have this, I'll send it to my brother. So it's there's certain ways to streamline your process. I think another really good, someone actually had an official name for it the other day, I forget what it was, but I've been saying this for years. We're we'll film something. So say we film a class, the class is going to go on our platform. From that class, we're going to pick 3 exercises, 3-minute clips. Those are Instagram posts, right? Those same Instagram posts can turn into shorts on our YouTube. And then we can take a full sequence from that same class, turn it into 5 minutes. That full sequence goes on YouTube as a longer format, not as a short. And then from there, we can also take any of those and build them into a blog. So that goes to SEO. So it's like we filmed once, but it fed all of our platforms across, and it was able to really kind of streamline our process as much as possible.
What's your key to pumping yourself up to get in front of the camera when you have to do that?
Lately, if it's working out wise, I won't. I don't even try to pump myself up or do it. I just am like, man, I'm ready to film everything else. You know, I really like having a model. That's really my favorite way to do it. Because also, like, especially teaching classes really soured me on this, but the idea of like coaching, cueing, doing it at the same time, like I think they all get worse. You're not doing any of them at a high level. With the models, it's tough though, because a lot of them do stuff and I'm like, man, I'll go back and look at the edit and I'll be like, oh man, they really sucked at that. Why are they doing that? Or why didn't I see that? And we film with 2 camera angles, so like you cannot hide, you know, so like you're going to see the mistakes the person's making in a lot of ways. But yeah, in terms of pumping myself up, I don't. And then with my other stuff, I have no problem doing it, you know, in terms of like, once you teach a workshop, or like I've taught a class in front of like 70, 90 people, like once you do that, it's a wrap. Like well, at least for me, I don't get worried about that anymore. If I was gonna pump myself up, maybe a velo slap. It's like in baseball where you slap yourself really hard on the back.
Right on.
Yeah.
Super grateful for the conversation. These conversations, talking to fitness people, content creators, I come away with these, motivated to, get in front of the camera, do the work, and even more ideas in terms of going back to the teams and lowering my expectations and not being so hard on myself when kids aren't getting certain things. So I'm just grateful for your time tonight, Ian, and the conversation has been really fun.
Thank you. Yeah, it's tough, man. We got a tough job. I mean, like you think about like things are changing nowadays, so there are people in jobs that have to do multiple things, but like to be a personal trainer and then also have to be this content creator, it's like it's a lot to ask of yourself. And one of the other things that I'll say that I think would be helpful is like there's a lot of stuff that goes viral and it is the lowest quality. You know what I mean? Like it's bad. Like even like memes, right? You can make a meme in 4 minutes, and if it has the right whatever for the algorithm, like it's gonna hit. So as long as you're swinging and you keep putting yourself out there, it's gonna grow. And it's just a matter of time before you hit that one. As frustrating as it is, I've had a really good time the past year, really celebrating the other people that I've known over the years, because man, we had like this huge drought where I just hated Instagram. And we were at 35K for literally a year and a half. Like, I don't understand how it happened. Like, how did we not either go down or up? We stayed there. It was like we'd lose someone, we'd gain someone. Like every single day, it was just over and over again. We literally did not move. And I had friends that just passed me, doubled me, tripled me. I've had students that passed me. And I'm just watching them over and over again. And at first I was like, what am I doing wrong? And then eventually I just kind of got used to like being happy for them. There's just so much cake to go around. So it's cool. And, even one of the people that we had as a guest coach on our course, they posted something that was a anatomy standard, which is like this unbelievable image of just the hip and it layers on the ligaments on it. He posted it. And when he posted it, he had like 10,000 followers. And the post, I posted it before too, and it like did really well. It got like 70K, and like me and my brother are like high five, and we're like, yeah. He posted it like 2 months later, and it got 15.5 million, and he went from 10K to 55,000, right past me, like just shoo, one post. So when you're feeling down, I would say you're just one home run away, and you can't hit home runs without swinging. So you just keep doing it.
Right. Got to shoot your shot.
Can't tell me things like that. That's what keeps you in the game of social media. Just that one post. Just that one post. That's all I need. And also, to your point about, sometimes you put time in, you got the good camera on it, and it doesn't get anything. And some of our lowest quality, my worst edits have our most views. And it's like, what is wrong with you people? So yeah, totally. Ed, having this conversation with you, I came up with a couple other rapid fire questions. And being someone who lives in Florida, but you lived a little bit in New York, I've had this conversation with some people out here in Colorado, and I must ask you, is Florida the East Coast? Is it the South? Is it both?
That's a good question. Do I have to answer these really fast? Is that
No,
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 no, no, no.
You got me with the rabbit. I was like,
No, we just call them rapid fire because there's no really cohesion. It's just a couple
Okay.
random questions.
cool, because that one deserves more explanation. So you could literally run into like the KKK if you were in like central North Florida. So like there's a crazy kind of like south, like really bad stuff in like maybe a rural area. And then you could see like the most beautiful or Botox like Brazilian booty lift crowd in Miami. And then you can go to Palm Beach. And then we also have, the west coast of Florida. So I'd say Florida is one of those states that really does have a good mixture of different things. And that's why I really love where I live, which is Boca or Delray area, which is an hour away from Miami. So it's kind of like, like there's good neighborhoods, there's family, there's still good food. And then the culture and the big time stuff more so down south in Miami, but still close enough. So if I was forced to pick, because of where I live, I'm not going to say it's the South at all. I like the East Coast. Yeah. If I was forced to choose between the South and the East Coast, I would say the East Coast for sure.
Florida, the more north you go, the more south you get.
Yeah, that's extremely accurate.
I appreciate that answer. The reason I ask is people always tell me it's not the East Coast, and I'm like, nah, it kind of is. And they're like, no, it's the South. I'm like, it's kind of both, but
Yeah.
I appreciate that answer. And the other thing, being a basketball guy, who you rooting for, professional, college, and who are your all-time favorites?
All-time favorite, Kobe Bryant. Grew up absolutely idolizing him in a lot of ways. Big time. Lakers fan because of Kobe. So as soon as he got to the Lakers, I basically was coming of age to like be like, all right, now I have a team. I understand what that means. So definitely a Lakers fan. So it was kind of heartbreaking to see them lose, but at the same time, I was really proud of our season. Love LeBron. When I play basketball, I'm obviously nowhere near LeBron, but just in terms of those two, I love to set other people up. So I really resonate with LeBron's game in terms of being able to make the right basketball play. So I'm a huge LeBron guy too. In terms of who do I want to win the rest of the time, I'll totally go with the Heat for obvious reasons. I love Jimmy Butler. I think what he's been able to do has been great. They're not my favorite team because I'm a Lakers fan, but yeah, I would be happy if they won. And then in terms of college, not a big college guy because when I went to Orlando, it was like tailgate, and then that's it. Like there wasn't like the school pride was like how drunk can we get, or how many sorority girls are here at this party. It wasn't really a big. And also, I think I'm a little bit sour on college in terms of my first year. I went to Santa Fe, which is the community college in Gainesville, and I would go to parties, and it was like I thought I was like ready to be the guy in college, obviously. And I would go to a party, and I'd meet a girl, and they'd be like, "So, what fraternity are you in?" I'd be like, "Oh, I'm not in a fraternity." They'd be like, "Oh, disappointing, but okay." And then they'd be like, "Well, what are you studying?" And then I'd be like, "Well, I'm at Santa Fe. I don't go to UF." And they'd be like, "Oh, okay. Well, it was really nice meeting you, and I hope you have a good night." And they would just walk away. So I kind of got soured on the idea of like what it would have felt to be a Gator, but I never really got that clearance. And then by the time I got to UCF, I was kind of a junior. I'm over fraternity stuff. Like I'm not going to join a frat. I was more interested in just dominating intramurals, like being at the gym all day at that point. So if I was forced to pick a team, I used to like Duke growing up. So maybe I'll throw Duke out there. I'll say that for my client UN. She's a huge Dookie.
Okay.
Ian, are you a coffee drinker?
Oh yeah.
How do you brew your coffee, and how do you take it?
I am a New Yorker in the sense that I actually love the overpriced process of going and getting a coffee. So I'll still often do that. cold brew all day, the largest one that they have. Lately, I'll just do whole milk. At home, we have a almond, we have a chocolate, and a vanilla almond milk. There's a good brand called Milk that has no additives to it. But yeah, I'm a big time coffee drinker, huge cold brew. And lately, I actually, to save money, I've even gone with a little bit of Dunkin', which is kind of crazy to think about. I mean, it would make my Boston family really happy, but it's okay. It can be okay. And I like the $4, and I'm gonna have a coffee that's gonna last me through the whole session. But yeah, definitely a big time coffee drinker, and definitely big time cold brew.
Nothing wrong with a little Dunkin' every once in a while.
Yeah. But Dunkin' breakfast though, especially as a New Yorker, that's like a really big crime. Like when I meet my family, or even like I'll meet some Canadians, and they'll be like, Tim Hortons, oh my God, the eggs there are delicious. And I'm like, oh, like I've never been to New York City and had an actual bagel sandwich. Like you could go to any deli in New York City, like the worst deli, and it'd still be better than a bacon, egg, and cheese from Dunkin' Donuts. So some of my family will kind of treat it like it's like the best breakfast ever. And it's like, you guys just haven't traveled enough. But and even funnier, I had family come visit New York City. They took their kids and they came to New York City, and I like hung out with them. I went out to dinner. And I was like, what'd you guys do today? I was like, oh, cool. What'd you guys have for breakfast? Because I like sent them a couple of breakfast places, and they literally went to Dunkin' in New York City. And I was like, you guys are not my family anymore. Yeah.
In your time in New York, did you ever happen to come across pork roll or Taylor ham?
Pork roll, is that like an Asian dish?
No, it's like a New
breakfast meat.
Jersey. It's like a breakfast meat. It's kind of
No.
like a
Canadian bacon type deal.
like
No, but I hate Canadian bacon. So if it was like that, I probably wouldn't be a fan, to be honest.
It's
Yeah.
way better than Canadian bacon.
I think it's more like Spam.
Okay, well, that would take me in the wrong direction as well. Yeah. You know what's funny is the two kids I was talking about earlier, we had this conversation for like, this lasted for like weeks. And I was like, do you guys like Canadian bacon? And they're like, there's no such thing. They're like, it's just bacon. And I'm like, no, there's an official thing named Canadian. And they like lost it. They like the whole session. There's no such thing. I'm always Googling stuff because I'm kind of like a boomer at this point for them. Like they're just young kids. I'm like, no, I swear, look, Google says that it's true. I'm like constantly throughout the session trying to like prove my point to them. And then I was like, you know what? Go home, ask your mom. They get in the car with her and she's like, yeah, Canadian bacon, of course. And I'm just like, yeah, I told you so. So yeah, that I'm not a fan of Canadian bacon, but I would try it, especially if it was a breakfast situation. I love breakfast, so.
Yeah, it's they usually do like pork roll, egg and cheese on a bagel. That's or like a hard roll. Yeah,
What are you guys going with bagel wise?
I go everything.
Yeah, solid.
Yeah, everything or salt.
What is that?
Everything or like a salt bagel back in my day.
Oh,
like
salt,
when I was a
salt.
kid, I used to do salt bagels. Not so much.
Yeah.
I don't even do bagels this day, but
Yeah. Yeah, and everything is good. I used to get whole wheat, and then I kind of like read some stuff about whole wheat kind of being a scam anyway, or not really being that big of a difference. So I'll just get a regular whole wheat. But whole wheat, I like a chorizo. I like a jalapeno cream cheese, bunch of egg, all on one. Make sure it's falling off of the sandwich. Get a good cut down the middle to make it easy. And yeah, that's that. When I go to New York, I usually think I gain 10 pounds, and then because I get 20,000 steps every day, I end up just like coming home even and really happy.
Yep. Yeah, that's probably the best thing about being in the city is all the walking you get to do.
Yeah, it's great. You can't beat it.
Ian, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of yourself?
Yeah, I used to do the daily cars a lot, which I think is a great routine if anybody's looking for something, especially if you feel very immobile or you're just looking for like a good baseline, no equipment thing. But in terms of what I do every day, I'd say if I had to say one, it would be the mouth tape. So I do a lot of things, but that's probably the thing that I do consistently on a daily basis. So yeah, that'd probably be my best answer for that.
Okay, thank you.
What are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. My my brother is like, he's the amount of concerts he's been to and like music events, he's filmed them, he's photographed them, he's been to them, is wild. And I honestly don't listen to music at all. Like, it's crazy how little I listen to music. I am a rap fan. I grew up on rap. So if I was gonna listen to something, it would be J. Cole, it would be Drake, it would be Mac Miller. You know, so those are the things that I think once the mumble rap age came in, it kind of killed my favorite genre, and I kind of took a step back on that. I also have a really hard time reading. I've honestly read like 20 books in my life, and like 7 of them are Harry Potter's, and I read them twice. So like probably read 4 books, you know what I mean? So you know, I'm not big on reading, so podcasts and like some audio books is for me. But the thing that I listen to the most, and maybe could have been, honestly could have been an answer for your previous question, is I love comedy. I'm really big on comedy. I find that it helps a lot with my clients too, because one of the things about personal training I think also gets overlooked is like, the person at the end of the day is really coming to hang out with you. And if you're a really good hang, you're going to really be successful in this business. If you haven't yet, you'll definitely get to a gym, especially if there's enough trainers, like a Crunch or like a, you know, a more like a big fitness gym, where you'll see a trainer, and they're like the trainer that's like, their client jumps from Bosu ball to Bosu ball. They're doing cleans on the Bosu ball. They're like always doing something random. They're doing battle ropes and burpees, like just like stuff that, you know, may work, but yeah, you easily tell they're not the best trainer, but their schedule is packed because they are such a good hang. They do so well with the communication, the aspects of all that stuff. And I think one of the things that helps me with that is actually listening to comedy podcasts and just listening to really funny people. So the Flagrant podcast with Andrew Schultz, I listen to every single week. Theo Vaughn's podcast every single week. I love Santino and Bobby Lee. So there's a lot of, like, for me, comedy is a huge part of my life at this point. And getting that daily dose of just laughing and listening. And also, when you get older, one of the sad things about it is like, it's really hard to hang out with your friends. And the friends that I try to hang out with are the way that I try to hang out with them is like, I'll invite them to basketball. I'll try to do something where it's like a 2 birds with 1 stone, where we're both being healthy, but we're also hanging out and I get to see you, you know? So it's really tough to hang out with your friends. So for me, listening to those podcasts and pretending I'm on the couch with them, laughing and just like busting balls and thinking about that stuff is it really fills a void for me. So that's what I spend the most of my time on in terms of that. And I'll probably listen to something 5-6 days a week. And maybe that's why I can't train, because I'm sitting there laughing instead of getting fired up. But even when I trained really hard, I would listen to like heartbreak music and Drake and stuff like that back in the day. So I don't really think that was it, but it's possible.
You ever listen to the Honeydew?
No.
Ryan Sickler, he's a comedian. He used to be called the Crab Feast, and then he split with his partner. Now he's doing it's a storytelling show. It's called the Honeydew. And then I don't know if you listened to Two Bears, One Cave with Tom
Yeah.
Segura and Bert Kreischer.
Yeah, I honestly, Bert, I don't like him. Yeah, no, I don't dislike him, and I respect him, and like I'm probably gonna see his movie too. But he just, I don't know. I just don't find him funny, honestly. And yeah, I just don't. I love Tom, but I
Yeah.
don't find him funny as much. Oh, Shane Gillis is my other like love.
Yeah.
Matt and Shane's podcast. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I talk about like feeling like I'm 18 or 19 again. Like, even the way they talk, the way that they say like, that's sick, or this rules, you know, it's just like, it makes me feel like, oh man, I'm back in my glory days. Like the way they talk, I love that. So, but yeah, I'll check out the podcast. You said Honeydew, right?
Yeah, like the melon.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll
and-
definitely check that out. I'm always looking for new stuff.
And Rich said the Crab Feast, that was his first podcast. They don't do it anymore, but all 600 episodes or whatever it was are out. And you said you like that feeling of hanging out with your friends. I'm telling you, I I didn't start listening to Crab Feast till it went off the air, but then I went back and listened to them all, and he was like telling me for years, but I'm telling you, it's got that hang, and some of the comic, like I know Bobby Lee did an episode, I know Santino did an episode, like your favorite comics have probably done an episode, so look into the Crab Feast.
So you think it would be best to just start from episode 1 and just let it ride?
I would say find your favorite
Yeah.
comics and start there, and then you'll
Okay.
just start. That's how I started. Just to kind of give you some suggestions of some really good Crab Feast guests. Steve Cantwell, those are great episodes. Josh Adam Myers, those are great episodes. Who's the
DVK.
Marshall Fields?
DVK, what is it? Dan Van Kirk.
Dan Van Kirk, Sam
Theo's
Tripoli.
done it a couple
Yeah,
times
Theo's
too.
done it.
Oh, I love Theo.
Yeah.
He's so unique, man. So unique. He's the best. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. I mean, I can always have more, you know.
Yeah.
But sometimes I put it on in the background when I'm working, and I wonder, hey, like, am I watching this or am I working? You know, especially because I usually watch on YouTube. I don't know why. I just like to do that.
Been there.
Yeah. Ian, last one for you. Do you have a guilty pleasure or guilty pleasures?
Yeah, I mean, I love ice cream, man. I like to smoke weed and I like to eat ice cream. So yeah, for sure.
In that order?
I'm big on that. Yeah, I'm very excessive. I'm an excessive person. I'm very all or nothing. So like when it comes to dessert, like I have to eat like a pint and I have to add a brownie to it, or I have to add a bunch of cookies. Like there is no middle ground with me. I actually recently stopped smoking and I immediately just was like, oh, like why would I eat dessert? And I just like don't need it anymore. It's like, who would have thought, you know? But yeah, that would definitely be my guilty pleasure. And you know what? I'll do a bonus one. I really enjoy a really fucked up documentary, like
wow.
like an R. Kelly, like a Michael Jackson. Like I don't know what it is. Like I just watched one on like Christian fundamentalists, like anything in that realm where it's just like really fucked up and well done. I'm locked in. I'm just episode after episode. And a third one, which is really just a 2B, would just be mowing shows. Like I love TV. I love good shows. I just crushed Eastbound and Down for the second time, just like mowed through it. So if I can get something like that and I'll be up to 1 a night, you know, just watching.
Right on.
Yeah.
So
we had one real quick thing that you said Michael Jackson documentary. We had a guy, a filmmaker on. He actually made a documentary about how he thinks that Michael Jackson is still alive and he faked his death.
Really?
Yeah.
That's something I would watch.
he was out there. He was out there.
Throw a little Tupac in there. Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, he has the money. He had the money that he probably could have. He could have invested enough and created that to do it. Like if someone was going to be able to do it, it could have been him. But yeah, my girl actually, she doesn't believe it and I do. So we kind of like go back and forth. So whenever I see something, I'll send it to her. You know, and she's like, her brother and her, their big thing is like, when Macaulay Culkin says he was arrested when he was molested, that's when I'll believe it.
That's what I say.
It's funny. That's really common to say, right?
Same thing with Corey Feldman. I believe it is. Like he said, everyone else, you know, did stuff with him, but he swears by Michael.
Yeah. I don't know, man. The holding hands, the chaperoning them around, the sleeping in their bed. Like he had me way before Macaulay even entered the chat, you know? Yeah. So
Ian, being a basketball guy and someone who likes to binge watch and mow down shows, did you watch Win in Time?
That's the LA on HBO.
Yeah,
of
course. Yeah. Loved it.
Yeah.
Also thought it was hilarious how Jerry West was so mad that they just like ruined his reputation in it. Yeah. That was pretty funny. But yeah, I thought that was great. I thought it was pretty well done too. Yeah, I liked it a lot. They made me like Magic Johnson a little bit more. Yeah. Not that I had a reason to dislike him. It was just he was kind of before my time. I just knew him as Larry's kind of rival in a way. But it made me like him a little bit more because I started learning a little bit more from that show and then outside of it.
Ian, that documentary is called Entering Neverland.
Okay, cool. YouTube, is it, you think it's on there?
I believe so. The guy's name is Sean Hibbler.
Okay, Entering Neverland. I could
Yeah.
Google it and probably come up somewhere.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Yeah,
you
of course.
so much for your time. This
Yeah.
is awesome. The podcast I listened to you today, you said you're having your Joe Rogan moment. So I hope we got to give you a little bit of a Joe Rogan moment tonight. And thanks for educating us.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys, and it was a great chat. It's fun.
Thanks, Ian. Have a great night.